Most of us have had a friend who didn't treat us right, but what Suzanne Capper experienced goes way beyond that. It goes beyond humanity. Suzanne was a sweet, gentle 16-year-old girl from Greater Manchester who just wanted to belong. She didn't have a stable home growing up, so when a woman named Jean Powell opened her front door, Suzanne stepped right in, grateful, trusting, and completely unaware of what that decision would cost her. One day, while Suzanne was just minding her business at the house, a bunch of Jean's friends who also crashed at the house started blaming her for giving them lice. And Suzanne, confused by this absurd statement, is like, what? Head lice? I don't have that. What are you talking about? But still, even after her denying it, nobody in the house was believing her. They just kept calling her disgusting and a pig. So she ran out of the house, probably crying, and decided to stay at her stepfather's house to get herself away from everybody. But after a few days of Suzanne isolating herself, Jean and one of her friends, Bernadette, started getting really bored around the house. Because you see, this wasn't like the friends who mess with each other as a joke group dynamic you think it is. Jean and her friends, Bernadette, Glenn, Anthony, Jeffrey, and Clifford, all found entertainment by bullying Suzanne. They'd basically take advantage of her kindness and use her as a punching bag. But Suzanne didn't really stand up for herself either. She was just really thankful to even be considered as part of their friend group, despite how mean they are to her. So one day, Jean and Bernadette came up with this hilarious prank to pull on Suzanne. But because she was still at her stepdad's house, they kind of realized, well, we need a way to lure her back to our house. So the whole group started plotting, and that's when they come up with an idea. Jean and Bernadette went out to Suzanne's stepdad's house and knocked on the door. And when Suzanne opened it and saw Jean standing there with Bernadette, she probably asked, what do you want? And very kindly, they both told her, well, we just wanted to let you know that someone at our house is looking for you. I think it's the boy that you like. Remember him? And Suzanne, elated by this, probably said, really? Oh my gosh, then let's go. So she closed the door behind her and they all walked back together to Jean's house, not knowing that Jean and Bernadette just successfully completed step one to luring her out of the house. When they finally got to the house, Bernadette is telling Suzanne, you should go through the door first, since, I mean, he is technically waiting for you. And so, not thinking much of it, Suzanne grabs the door handle, pushes the door open, and yang! Suzanne's body gets pulled inside and shoved to the ground. And before she could even realize what is going on, the sound of razors clicks on and something fuzzy is falling down onto her lap. It's her hair. They're shaving her hair off. Suzanne is screaming, trying to scramble to her feet, but hands are pressing her down, multiple sets of hands, and the razor keeps going. Jean is laughing, Bernadette is laughing, Glenn, Anthony, Jeffrey, Clifford, all of them are circling around her like this is the funniest thing they've ever seen. And it was all because they wanted payback for her giving them head lice, which, mind you, wasn't even proven. And when it was finally over, Suzanne's head is nearly bald. She's sitting on the floor, trembling, surrounded by clumps of her own hair, and nobody is helping her. You must be another level of evil to set up your friend like that. But here's where it gets darker, because this wasn't the end of the prank. This was just the beginning. They started yelling at Suzanne, saying, well, look at this mess of hair you made. Clean it up. And without any choice in the matter, she was forced to pick up her own hair off the floor as if she were the reason it was there. And then afterwards, they beat her, going back and forth with their fists and suffocating her with a plastic bag, but taking it off right before she passes out so that they can keep taunting her. And when it was over, Jean locked her in a cupboard for the rest of the night, where Suzanne screamed until morning. When the next day came, the group got so tired of hearing her screams all night that they made a decision that tells you everything you need to know about how far gone they already were. They moved Suzanne to Bernadette's old house just a few buildings down, where they knew they wouldn't have to worry about hearing her screams. They then stripped her down in such an intrusive way, they tied her spread eagle to an upturned bed frame using electrical wire, ropes, belts, and chains. Then they stuffed a whole bunch of dirty socks into her mouth to try to muffle out any more screams. And then they left her there. As Suzanne laid there, laying on top of barbed wire in excruciating pain, she's now realizing the reality of her situation. Her so-called friends are keeping her held captive. But through it all, Suzanne kept thinking that maybe if she cooperates the way that they want, then they'll stop. They'll get bored of me and let me go. But that is not what happened. Over the next several days, Suzanne suffered through torture unlike anything a human should ever endure. The group, most of them high on a whole bunch of substances, came in and out of that house over and over again, beating her, burning her with cigarettes all over her body, injecting her with drugs against her will, and at one point pulling her teeth out with pliers and leaving her nerves completely exposed. At some point, they shoved her body into a bathtub filled with concentrated disinfectant, and they scrubbed her cut up skin with a yard brush. And through all of it, through every single session they would do, Bernadette would walk into that room and taunt her by saying the same thing before she started. Chucky's coming to play. Bro, that is demonic. Now, here's the part of the story that really haunts me the most, and I need you to sit with this for a second. At some point during those 5 days, a man named David Hill came to the house. He walked in and saw Suzanne. He saw the condition that she was in, tied to the bed frame, injured, barely able to speak. And Suzanne looked at him and begged him for help. She said, "Please untie me. Please, can you help me?" But David looked at her and said, "I can't. I'm sorry. I don't want them to get mad at me." And he left the house without saying a word. Suzanne stayed tied to that bed alone, knowing that someone had just seen her and still chose to walk away. I think about what that moment must have felt like for her more than I probably should. And it breaks my heart because all she ever truly wanted was to be loved back. Why is life so unfair? I don't understand. 5 days later, on December 14th, in the early hours of the morning, the group decided that it was time to get rid of her. I guess they got bored. So they forced Suzanne into a car and drove her 15 miles out to a stretch of countryside on the outskirts of Stockport. Suzanne hasn't seen the light of day in what feels like forever. She's weak, she's exhausted, and somewhere in the fog of everything that her body has been put through, a small, desperate thought starts to form. Maybe it was over. Maybe they're done. The car has been moving for a while now, and she can't see where they're going, but the motion itself feels like relief. Maybe they're taking her somewhere, dropping her off and walking away from all of this. But then the car stops. Before Suzanne can make sense of anything, Bernadette yanks her out and shoves her down an embankment on the side of the road, her body tumbling in the dark, hitting the cold earth at the bottom. And then she smells it. The sharp, pungent smell of petrol already soaking into her clothes and skin before she could even react. Bernadette is standing over her, pouring it, emptying the whole container of fuel onto her body. And when it's finally on its last drop, she throws it to the side, grabs a lighter, and clicks it on. But it doesn't flame up, so she clicks again. But it still won't go. And I think in this moment, a sane person would take this as a sign that, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe this is crossing the line. Just let her live. But no. Not for Bernadette or Jean or the whole group for that matter. She yells back to the group and says, "Hey, this dumbass lighter isn't working. Let me get yours." And they toss her a new one. She catches it, clicks it on, and the flame just glows in between Suzanne's eyes as she stares at Bernadette for any type of mercy. But Bernadette smiles at her and whispers, "Burn, baby. Burn," before lighting Suzanne's entire body up into scorching flames. The group gets back in the car and drive away as they watch Suzanne burn on the side of the road. But little did they know how much fight Suzanne had left in her, because despite everything they put her through, she was still here. The flames eventually burned out, and Suzanne Capper was still alive. Broken, barely breathing, but alive. Like her body refused to let them have the last word. She managed to use her last bit of energy to crawl up to the side of the road where a few men driving past spotted her and stopped. What they saw when they got out of their car was something that they have never been able to forget. Her hands looked like ash, her legs were raw meat, and her feet were so badly charred that they were almost unrecognizable. And yet, despite how much pain she was in, she was still thanking them, politely and quietly thanking these strangers who stopped to help her. That detail alone should tell you everything you need to know about who Suzanne Capper really was. A truly just loving and kind person. When she was rushed to the hospital, Suzanne did something absolutely remarkable. While she was in and out of consciousness, she found the strength to give the doctors the names and addresses of all 6 of her attackers. Every single one of them. And not long after, she quietly slipped into a coma, and Suzanne never woke back up. Suzanne Capper died on December 18th, 1992 at Withington Hospital, surrounded by her parents and people who truly loved her. She was only 16 years old, you guys. 16. All 6 of these worthless clumps of cells were tried and convicted, with Bernadette, Jean, and Glenn receiving life in prison with a minimum of 25 years. Anthony, who was only 16 at the time, received a minimum of 18 years. Clifford received 15, and Jeffrey received 12. Suzanne Capper just wanted somewhere to belong. She deserved so much better than the people that she found. So please remember her name. I will see you next time. Mwah. Group hug.